Hey everyone, my name is Tanya. I'm 52 or 53. I always forget. I'm from the Netherlands, hence my accent. Um, and I wish to talk about the Vipassana experience I had about a month ago. Vipassana is a 10-day meditation course, and it's free. It works on donation, and it seems to be working well because they have centers all around the world on beautiful spots in nature. I did my first Vipassana when I was a bit stuck in my life in 2009 in New Zealand, where I was living at that time. And it brought a big change in that time already, because you are, in those 10 days, not allowed to talk with anyone, not allowed to look at other people, have nonverbal forms of communication. The only thing you do is 12 hours a day, meditate, meditate, meditate. And so you are alone with your own mind. So much that was terrible. So much shit I have in myself and in my mind. My mind would go to anything to not meditate. So when in New Zealand, in Auckland, I was doing this Vipassana, I thought I was going crazy. Oh my God. Oh, the amount of shit my mind came up with, it was incredible. And it was worse, much more painful, much more hard to get through than the births of my children, which I found very intense and which I experienced as painful. I know that there are people that do not experience it as painful, but they are rare. So for me, Vipassana was more scary than going to the dentist, and more intense than giving birth. But I got through it, and on the 6th day in Auckland, I was, I thought, okay, we're almost through, 6th day, it's 10 days, okay, I can do this, another 4 days, and then I surrendered to it, and then that's when, of course, the big changes started happening. My mind became crystal clear and focused, so sharply focused. Memories of my childhood came back that were before the age of 3. Some flashes from past lives even. But everyone has a different experience in Vipassana. So whatever I'm going to say now is not having to be your experience. It can be anything, but it will definitely do something for you, something positive, I can assure you. Anyway, so that was in 2009, and so I already made a big change after that in my life. And in that change, I already wrote before this video. I started seeing more things about the workings and the mechanism of this reality and of the world. And I started reading Eckhart Tolle, and I started reading Conversations with God, and I started exploring myself more. And then I got to a sort of a point where I was leveling out. I was still spreading in the sense of more information. That was slowly expanding. But I was no longer going further. So it was more in this sense, in the horizontal way, and no longer expanding my whole self. It was as if I reached like a ceiling. That's what it felt like. And that made me so frustrated in the last 3 years that I couldn't, even though I could see new things of myself, it was still in the sense of this, not in the sense of that. It was all within that same frame, in that same field, whatever word you want to use. And so there was a time 2 years ago, in the winter from 2018 to 2019, that I was walking here on our land where we only recently live, only 3 years. So I'm living in Spain, in the south of Spain. So I was walking, and there's like a big ravine on the side of our land. And I would be looking a bit almost longingly at that ravine. Like I wouldn't actually mind if my life would end. Like, not that I wanted to commit suicide, but more in the sense of maybe I could accidentally trip or something. I wasn't really depressed and I wasn't really feeling that shit, but it was simply my enormous disappointment at the fact that I could not expand any further. And my life felt so boring and meaningless at that point. So yeah. So I actually went through and suffered a bit more over these last 2 years. And then, of course, the COVID hit, and that kept me occupied, and I was so angry, and then I tried to be neutral because I could feel that the anger was also not very handy and not a good feeling, and I didn't like it because it made me feel powerless. And then I thought maybe we need to go to demonstrations, maybe we need to do something. There were many things that I thought in that time, and many things that I tried and did and all that. I would write on my Facebook page almost every day about it. And so at some point, I realized this is not going anywhere. And so somewhere this last year, so in 2021, my daughter decided, she is now 18, but she was 17 at the time, that she wanted to do a Vipassana. Because we had told her about it, me and my husband, he also did Vipassana. And she was like, yeah, maybe that can help me, to become more focused, more clear in my head. And maybe I can find my goal or a goal. So yeah, so I was hoping for her that because she had to be 18, that she could go then. And so she turned 18 and I talked with her about it. And she was like, yeah, I still want to go. So I started looking online and I realized there's 2 centers or so in Spain. And I wanted to book her. And I realized I would have to drive her, probably, because my husband does a lot of the work on the land here. So I have more spare time to do that. So I thought, yeah, I'll bring her, I'll do that. And then I thought maybe I should do a Vipassana. And the problem was that, of course, this was true. I needed to do one, but I didn't want to. So I tried to push it away, but it kept on coming back, like nagging in the back of my head. And I realized I do have to go. So I booked the Vipassana for both of us. And I was actually admitted before she was. Because at some point I thought, oh shit, maybe I have to go alone. And maybe she was just, the guide to get me there in a way. But no, she actually also got admitted. So that was nice. We could drive there together. We could chat on the way. And she had no idea what to expect, obviously. But she was hoping that her life would also become more clear in some way. Maybe her path would become more clear. Um, in the time after the last Vipassana, around 2012, I started communicating with what I would now call parts of me, and what other people would call, most other people would call, guides, angels, aliens, and they would call it channeling, but I now call it talking to myself. So I believe that that everything, there is nothing outside of us. So there is nothing outside of me. There is no, there, of course there might be angels, but they're all aspects of me, you know, so that's how I look at it now. But in that time I thought I was talking to something like God maybe, or my higher self or something, or angels. So I was doing that and I got lots of insights from that. But over time, over the years, this became less reliable. And I realized there are many layers in which you can communicate with parts of yourself. And if I would be fearful, I would communicate with layers that would fit with my fear. If I would be in a somewhat higher frequency, I would be able to communicate with layers of myself that were in a somewhat higher frequency. But yeah, as I said, I plateaued at some point. So I couldn't reach any other layer than the layer I was plateauing in. So also those conversations didn't add much to my insights. And I got also very disappointed in that, because I have been letting myself be guided by these communications for years, and it worked so well for me. Like, I found so many things in my life turning out so good because of these communications. But some years ago, they started becoming more and more unclear and muddled, and I wasn't sure what to do with them anymore. And I, at some point, couldn't trust them. Like, I felt I couldn't trust myself. I would now say myself, but in that time, I would say them. So when I went to this Vipassana, I came in with a lot of disappointment in life, and I would want so much. I had such a big wish to become more aligned with myself again, to get into real contact with myself again, with my inner self, my higher layers, to be able to expand again. And most of all, because I realized this was the main point that was stopping me, was plateauing me. Main point was I would want to accept my suffering. Because the problem was that I was not accepting suffering at all. So I had to constantly try and control my life, either on lower or on higher levels. I was trying to, through meditation or through, whatever, looking at the things I needed to do the next day or whatever. In any possible way, I would try to control my life because I did not want to suffer. And that worked a little, but in reality, I was suffering because I was doing that. And I did not get any further because I was trying to control that. So I would be, for instance, I would get a request from somebody about something. I don't have to go into detail. I'll just keep it very global, but just very, very general, because it's clear anyway. And then I would meditate about this request so that I could make the right decision that would not make me suffer. And that worked. Another example would be, let's say we would go on a holiday or we would go on a trip. I would meditate about when and how, what time, how long, where, and just to make sure we would have a good holiday. And that would work. But it all became so boring and neutral, yeah. And I realized that before I went to Vipassana, this was already a realization I had, that my avoiding suffering was causing suffering. So I realized that I needed to accept somehow suffering, and I was hoping that Vipassana could bring me that. So Yes, the first day of Vipassana, you can still talk with people. So I got to know the person I was sharing a room with. My daughter had another room with other people, and I wouldn't be able to communicate or non-verbally communicate with her either, so I knew that. I was going to try and hold to the code of discipline, because I know it's a part of getting deeper. It works best if you just keep to the code in that sense, and not that you have to do that after. Not that you, when you do Vipassana by yourself, have to hold on to any code, but for this 10 days to get the grip, to get a feel, it's a good thing that they made the code, I suppose. When I did the Vipassana in 2009, I was resisting this code so much because I have like an allergy to anything that has authority. So to abide by a code was like, oh my God, so not me. So I was struggling that as well as with myself. I was struggling with the code, I was struggling with myself. It was just a pain, a big pain. But this time I was like, I'm going here voluntarily. I would like to get very deep into myself, and I will follow the code. So yeah. And still, I got into such struggle with myself, even though I was so aware of what was going to happen to me. And I was so okay with the code of not talking, not looking at others, meditating at the appointed times. I was so okay with all that. And still, it was so hard, so hard. You get up at 4 in the morning, and then at 4:30, you can either meditate in the big hall with others, or you can do that in your own room. And I did it in my room as much as I could, because then I could make like a throne on my bed, because you have to imagine that you sit for hours and hours on your butt or on your knees on a pillow, and that's it. And then you get pain and pain and pain, and so much pain you get everywhere. You cannot handle that pain almost. It's like, oh my God. So I would make this throne on my bed, and it was very nice. And I developed a very severe back pain. One of the bones in my back, lower back, were not aligned very well. It was already a problem for a long time. But now it was, of course, playing out. So, oh my God, I had a feeling like I was getting a hernia or something. There were moments when I almost couldn't stand up anymore, where my leg felt numb. It was terrible. At night I couldn't sleep. It felt like my whole pelvis was falling apart, as if all the bones in my pelvis were just loose. And the pain was constant. There was constant pain. So I remember on the 4th day I was walking, because you can have little walks in between things. And I was looking at my suffering, and I was so disappointed that I was still doing that so much, this suffering and resisting, the meditations, and resisting myself. And oh my God, I felt so disappointed with myself. I thought it would be easier than the last time, but it wasn't. It was harder. And it was harder because I was disappointed. The disappointment made it harder. So yeah, it didn't get any better. And then on the evening of the 4th day, the real Vipassana was going to start. And that meant that you would have to sit for 3 of the hours spread through the day, 3 hours, totally still, not moving. And I'd been getting through all this by, sitting on a throne in my bed, moving a lot during the sittings in the temple, I would say temple, but it's just the meditation hall, because it's not a religious thing at all. And now I would have to sit still for a complete hour, even though my back was excruciatingly painful by that time, after 4 days of sitting and meditating. And Vipassana means, in a way, that you look at the sensations on your body, in your body, but in the first instance on your body, so your skin. Like if I touch my skin, I can feel a sensation here. You just look at sensations, and they are always there. Whether you touch some part of your skin or not, even without touching, there's always going to be a sensation. And the sensation can be anything. It can be warmth, cold, pressure, lightness, a light feeling like feather. It could be anything. It can be like a vibrational thing. It can be anything. So I would have to sit still for 3 hours during that day. They were spread, thank God. But 1 hour sitting still had not been possible yet. So I was like, how am I going to do this? In the first 4 days, you only look at your breathing, and then you're still allowed to move a lot. But then I had to sort of discipline myself to sit still for an hour. So I did that once. And it was very, very hard. So I asked for a chair with a back so that I could rest my back a little. And I got one of the folding things that you can lie on the ground, like that. Like, how do you do that? Like this. So just on the ground, and I would put a pillow on the bottom and against the back, and I would sit, and that would be a little bit better, but still very painful. So from then on, it was pure vipassana, looking at sensations constantly, hours. And I became more and more disciplined, and it became easier and easier from the 6th day. Same as last time. It's an interesting day, the 6th day. It's not that it's an easy day, but it's like the day where you notice that you're past halfway, and also you notice the effect of just looking at all the sensations. And you notice how clear your mind becomes. Everybody notices this, and that happens around the 6th day. And then it becomes easier to continue. And it hasn't been easy. For the whole 10 days, every single day had its hardships. I will be very honest about that. It has not gotten easy. It just got rewarding in a way, because I could see results. And what happened was that my mind, from simply observing the sensations, became clearer, more clear. Normally my mind would feel a little bit like, when I meditated, my mind would feel like a room that was full of clutter, full of things everywhere, in every corner, everywhere. Now all the clutter was disappearing, and the room was growing in size. So it was a hole, and then it became like, I don't know, a bigger hole. Such a big hole that it just wouldn't seem to end. And so enormously clear that you cannot even imagine. It's, yeah. And if I would have a thought, it would be like the only thing in that space. Just that thought. So that was a really interesting look. And I came to the realization while I was observing, I think this was around the 7th day, I was observing these sensations, and I went deeper in them, and also in the painful ones in my back, because my back was still sore, very sore. I went into them, and I started looking into the pain and looking at what is the actual sensation of the pain. And I realized pain does not exist, because when I started observing it, it turned out to be like a pressure, maybe, or a cold or a heat, and the pain had gone. So I was trying to follow the pain. Where are you going? Where are you going? But it just disappeared completely. It didn't exist. It was like a non-existing thing. It was so strange. And then I went deeper, and I actually saw how my mind created my body. How my mind was in every second, nanosecond, microsecond, every small bit of time was creating my body again and again and again and again. This was a continuous process, and that was quite a big thing to see, that I was creating my own body with my mind. I will tell you a bit more in the next video about this, because this was a big thing, and I'll explain a bit more about what I mean with mind, because there's a lot of meanings for the word mind, and a lot of conceptions and ideas that people have about mind. and what it means. So I will explain a bit further in the next video. See you then.